Hello and welcome to the IdeaCast interview series, episode number 44. My guest in this episode is Karen Maloney, and Karen identifies her work as being that of an inside-out coach, and we'll find out about what that means during the interview. And Karen brings a lot of resources to the table when it comes to coaching and mentoring folks. And I threw mentoring in there. She doesn't describe as a mentor, but I see that as part of the process. So that's me. But I bring people like Karen on board, and I have had other coaches on before because I think these persons are the ones doing the work out there and co-creating and co-producing with a lot of people, and I think that's important. And Karen's work resonates with where I'm coming from in terms of transformation and co-creation and co-production. So it was a pleasure having her on for this conversation. I will have links to her website down below as well as her social media, and I encourage you to check out, find out more beyond this conversation. And she can be accessed through email, so if you have any questions that stem from the interview, you're welcome to do that. So let's get into this conversation with Karen. And I thank you so much for being here with us. And I'd like to welcome Karen Maloney to the IdeaCast interview series. Karen, it's wonderful to have you here, and I'm looking forward to a conversation with you today.
Thank you so much, Justin. And just as we start, a plane is flying overhead. I don't know if you're picking up on that, but this is a warning as well. I live in Mexico, so any sounds could kick off at any time.
Absolutely no problem at all. I live next to an airport, so I'll have to say mea culpa if a plane does happen to rev up or jet off or whatever. So it's fine. In fact, I listened to one of your blogs last night, and there were dogs barking in the background. I thought that was beautiful. I thought,
the dogs.
Right. You're not in a slicked up professional studio. I'd be a little more dubious of you if you were in this like high production studio. So the fact that there's dogs in the background is
I try
perfect.
my best.
That's all you can
sometimes those dogs kick off and my God, they're loud. And I'm like, I just have to keep going. I'm not going to wait for them to stop because then I'll be waiting forever. So I'm like, just keep going.
Yeah. No, it was beautiful. It had charm to it, right? So
but I don't know if you ever listen to podcasts. Well, it happens to me sometimes, if you have your earphones in and then you hear like a dog barking or something and you're like, oh, is that me? And then you're like, oh no, it's actually on the audio.
On the audio, right.
So my audio is never perfect.
Yeah, sure.
And that's
again, why should it be, right? It's that old wabi-sabi concept. It's like, let's have imperfect perfection. That's fine. And there's a gal that I listen to. Now they've gone completely to computer voice, but the woman used to do her own thing for a philosophy channel on YouTube, and she'd have chickens in the background. And I commented one time, and I think she got embarrassed. I'm like, I love your chickens. And she's like, oh gosh, I'm sorry. And I'm like, no, that's the charm. And then they went to that weird kind of syncopated, computer voice thing that does their things now. And that's fine too, but I miss her voice. It was so cute with old French accent and the chickens in the background. It's perfect. So
I had chickens once as well, one place I lived.
Oh, okay. They're fun. Both my neighbors
progressed.
Yeah. Now you have dogs.
Dogs.
Keeping you
on the dog moment.
Yeah. And that was quite a pack of dogs. Anyway, we're not here to talk about dogs necessarily. We're here to talk about the wonderful things that you do. And I want to platform that and get people aware of that. So first of all, I'll welcome the YouTube audience after my tangent on background noises and so forth, and Karen humoring me with that. But Karen, I do want to ask before we get started on talking about your work, let's get a little revelation about where you've been and what's brought you to where you are in your life, and learn a little bit about you and some background if we could.
Yeah, sure. So again, it's a pleasure to be with you all. And yeah, I mean, what can I say other than my own life journey has kind of brought me to where I am, like many people in the space that I'm in. And I suppose I came to a point in my life where I went through a massive breakup and trauma, and I just kind of realized, oh my God, I'm the common denominator here in my life. And I really was kind of fed up and tired of going through similar situations, although different, and not feeling really good on the inside and I used to feel very numb. I look back now and I kind of live my life on freeze mode. And again, what happens to us, especially in the developmental years before the age of 7, really is kind of the imprint that we move forward with in our life, unless we're on an inner journey and conscious and changing it. So we all have limiting beliefs. We all have things that happen to us, whether big traumas or small traumas, and they create limitations and beliefs within us. And then we kind of live out our life meeting or trying to meet maybe needs that weren't being met at the time. So, you know, I had my own childhood as well, and I really didn't feel very safe. I can look back and see, and like that, I lived in freeze mode, and I was kind of always on edge, and that made me then become really now I can say as well, very I was a high functioning anxious person.
Okay.
And I would never have said I was an anxious person at all. It just did not enter into my radar. But now I can look back and go, oh no. And that was my fear of stopping. I just kept going and going and going and going. And it was like, I just need to achieve and do, and that over independence. And because I was so afraid to feel, in one sense, I was shut off from my body. Again, I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know how to rest. And, you know, when we're not connected and aligned to the truth of ourselves, and we somehow feel broken or inferior, again, these are kind of the patterns we'll live out. And when we're not in true alignment with ourselves, we kind of end up having a lot of dysfunctional relationships of every description, because everything is relationship, whether it's with food, whether it's with person, whether it's with your job, yourself. We're kind of in relationship with everything. So, but at the same time, even though I had all this inner conflict and really didn't feel good enough, and that, you know, led to my overachieving as well, because, and again, this was not conscious, you know, just to say to people listening, this was not conscious to me at all. It's only through the inner work and the curiosity and the exploring that I can kind of look back and open up and gain these perspectives. But I could see how, yeah, I definitely felt unworthy and like I had something to prove. And that proof was in the externals, you know, through the job and my achievements and all these kind of things. And even though I had a lot of this inner conflict, you know, striving for this perfection, I also had this really curious, intuitive part. And now I can look back as well and see how strong that was and actually how tapped in I was. But again, I didn't know. I didn't understand it. I just knew every now and again this really strong urge to do something that seemed totally different to everyone else and the way everyone else was doing life. But I knew to trust it, even though everything in my head, it was going against kind of every standard or moral I had at the time, but something within me knew to trust. And books were a real savior for me as well back in the day. And this was like my own secret. You know, I liked kind of esoteric things. I knew there was something in this feeling, but again, I didn't have the language. I didn't understand it. And it was kind of like my little secret. It's not like I had loads of friends that I would talk to about these things. And yeah, like that, I really just came to a point where everything that I had read and learned in books, I started walking my talk after that event. You know, I was like, okay, there has to be things within me. You know, again, I am the common denominator. So if I'm not willing to be accountable and want to really cherish and honor myself, no matter what some other person does, because again, people would do whatever they want, like, and people do all sorts of things. But if I allow a person and their actions to affect my internal emotional state and my life and my well-being, well, again, that's my choice. And that's not very obvious, but it actually is our choice. And, you know, I chose to stand up for myself. I chose to be accountable. I chose to actually sit my ass down and do the inner work and face whatever I needed to face in order to rewire, in order to relearn myself, and in order to just actually be me and not feel unworthy. So that's kind of a long story short to coming to do what I do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great story. And I think in reading one of your blogs, to just add an aspect to your story is that you wrote about truth. And you said trust just a moment ago. And so I conflate the two in this particular situation or context that you were dealing with. And I would also think intuition, that you in your blog had written that you sort of went with the intellectual aspect of what was going on and just intellectualized it and said, no, I'm pretty sure I'm reading the radar right here and everything's fine. But the heart, the intuition, was the keeper of that sort of ultimate personal truth. As to what might have been the best means. But on the flip side of that, I guess, would you agree that perhaps having gone through that upsetting event and admittedly life-changing event, it brought you to a better, maybe a better place, or you know, it was the means to get you over the hill, as it were, to do what you're doing. So in other words, trusting, opening up, knowing what the intuitive truth might be within you, to get you where you can make better, more sound decisions, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it absolutely was a catalyst for me. And I think anyone who has gone through any major trauma, and any person I've spoken to in my podcast as well, and they're really challenging times, when you get to a new level and understanding and a connection to yourself, you do look back and you don't have that emotional, visceral reaction. You're like, yeah, well, this was my path and these were the steps that got me to where I am. Now, that's not to say we have to wait for some major tragedy or disaster to strike. We actually don't. But most of us are too afraid to take the steps and be accountable and be responsible for ourselves and actually be honest with ourselves. Because again, the hardest person to be honest with was actually myself. Because when I really got honest, I was like, yeah, I know I didn't feel good. I know that relationship wasn't right for me, but I had a fear story running me that I allowed to run me, as opposed to honor my truth and do the hard thing or walk away or whatever it is I needed to do within myself. So, you know, that honesty piece is massive. And yeah, I don't, you know, sometimes I'm like, I have no hatred, you know, towards that person or anything, but also it's not like giving him the clap on the back going, oh yeah, well, you know, he did me a favor at the end of the day.
Right.
You know, it's powerful because I chose to do the work. I chose to run with it. I chose to sit with myself and to go within and actually see what was hidden, what were the limitations, what was within me subconsciously that I was not aware of. So that's why it's worth gold, because I chose to run with it and go with it. And anybody else would say the same.
Sure, absolutely. And I think it's a healthy form of closure that you can reflect in that manner. And it would apply across, I think, the spectrum of relationships, for, say, abusive parents or whatever, that you can come out without, that you understand what happened. You can sort of sort through that in your mind, but also in your heart, you can understand that it sort of brought you to where you are, and that all that suffering was not in vain, and that it taught you valuable lessons. Years ago, someone who I respected told me that we learn by experiencing the opposite of what we want. That's one way of learning, right? The other way we can learn is to listen to the sage of the others that would, like you, conveying a story and saying, this is what I dealt with. And, you know, if it helps you in any way, or it could be parallel, it could be sympathetic, and you have a friend that may have gone through the same situation, and you two can commiserate on that. So there's multiple angles of learning on that. But I think, again, there is that hidden blessing in coming full circle in a upsetting or traumatic experience, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it's, you know, it's a part of human life as well. As the saying goes, not many of us see the faith in the light. We have to wait for the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, it's fine. But again, we also don't have to. But not waiting for some catastrophe, again, requires another level of kind of willingness and effort, because and seen through our own stories. Because again, you know, just coming back to an example of that relationship, in my head I was telling myself, what if I don't get another chance? Like, you know, things will change, it will come back to how it used to be, or that. So it was those stories that were actually keeping me in the situation. So in order for me to have walk away before that disaster, quote unquote, it would have taken me to, again, be honest, wake up and go, actually, this kind of treatment is not okay for me, even though there was nothing major, but there was, because when I look back, it kind of looked like emotional abuse. I was afraid to like speak up, and I'm like, that's no way to live. But because I had a fierce story, I accepted it, because I was like, well, he hasn't done anything majorly wrong. So, you know, again, if I break up now, what am I going to say to people? Like, I kind of don't have an excuse to be like, yeah, he cheated on me or something like this, you know? So it's our own internal battle and story, really, always, period, full stop. We're our only limit. And like you're saying as well, everything is a kind of signal for us to come back to ourselves. Like life is reflecting me all the time. Life is reflecting all of us all of the time. And even as the Mayans say, everything is love. Absolutely everything is love. Even the things that are definitely not love, they're clearly showing you what love is not. So you come back to what is love, what is that truth, what is that ease and flow.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a discipline within Christianity that I like, and we might have even talked about it during our pre-meeting that we had a couple weeks ago, and it's called apophasis or apophatic belief, and it's called negative spirituality. And when you touched on that point about love and what the Mayans were saying, that even something crappy that comes at you is there as a gift of love, and it may not feel like it at the time, but that's a kind of apophasis. So it's how do you know something by what it is not? So if something is ugly or traumatic or a maelstrom of events in your life, but again, if with healing and with clarity you can come out and say, my God, that was such a great opportunity to heal and understand and learn more about myself. There's obvious exceptions to that, severity and the issues, but anyway, you touched on that.
But something that might relate to people is what I ultimately came to in my truth as well was like, I put the love of that person over and above the love for myself.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate truth. I'm like, no, I need to love myself first and foremost, more than anything else. And it's not a more than I'm a better than, it's a more than, so I fill myself up and it pours out of me into another.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate truth. So that's that sense in that everything is love, and it's showing me within myself where I'm not in alignment, where I'm not connected to myself in love.
Yeah, absolutely. I could use a crass metaphor and say, that's kind of like being an engine. And if your engine's not running right, you're not going very far. The vehicle will not perform well. And so to deliver the best, not to commodify ourselves, but to deliver the best performance, we must be whole inside. And and I think you're a better partner or a better friend or a better parent or whatever when you are whole, because then you can give and you don't resent the giving in that situation. Now, okay, I'm sorry. Did you want to finish up a thought? Because I was going to segue, but did you have something?
No.
Oh, okay,
No,
good. Okay,
good.
I've got a little segue. One thing I thought I would check in with you on is there is a modality or a technique that you've picked up, and it was something you talked about in one of your podcasts, and it relates to a couple that were in Scotland that had developed this technique. And there was an anecdote that you gave and talking about trauma, that there was a young woman who came to this couple. I'll let you fill in the details, but I'll start that they came up with a means through what was the branch of psychology? Energy psychology, I think you mentioned. Okay. Can you tell us that story and the modality that you use in your work that you do?
Yeah. So one of the modalities I use is called silent counseling. And again, it works off our body's meridians. And, our meridians are our meridians, getting tongue-tied. And it's based off traditional Chinese medicine. And it's related as well to this mind-body connection. Like, we are not two separates. We are a whole thing, and our thoughts and what we think has an experience as well on our body and vice versa. So it's working with the meridians and muscle testing with the person to see where they're holding blockages in their body. Because again, it's really important in healing to get our body involved, because our body is our subconscious mind. That's where all the programs are being run from. And if we don't go in to clear some of that, especially if there's deeper emotional imprints and traumas that haven't been released, we need to release them in order to truly heal. There's that saying as well, we have to feel it in order to heal it. And that's true, because only by it coming through our consciousness can we then release it. So it's a really safe and powerful modality, using touch on different acupressure points on the meridians and our breath, which is our life force, to safely release these blockages we might be holding within. And like that, it was created by two energy psychologists in Scotland who had a really thriving practice, especially in the areas of addiction. And both of them, a husband and wife couple, both of them were trained in lots of different modalities. And one day they had a young girl who was only 18 years of age who came into their office and was so traumatized, couldn't even speak. Like, the more she was trying to speak or share and she was stuttering, she was getting re-traumatized again. And she was only young, and she'd been prostituted from like the age of 5 and had been through all horrible addictions and prison and all sorts. So them just thinking on their feet, they were like, we really need to help her. She clearly can't speak, and we can't let her out of the office like this. So they just started using muscle testing on her to see where there might be blockages in her body. And they just simply held different points and breathed, using the breath, just breathing in and out nice and deep. And within a couple of sessions, for the first time in her life, she could actually speak about things and begin to unburden herself even more, because she didn't have such a visceral reaction. She wasn't re-traumatized every time, because she had released some of the energy that was stuck in her body. So that obviously wasn't it straight away, but they developed it and honed it for years, and eventually became what's known as silent counseling. And one of the powers is the silence, that a person does not have to speak if they don't want to. Because again, like that, when something, and it may not be recent, but when it's so raw and we still have such a visceral reaction, it's actually more traumatizing to speak about it again. Because again, it's this mind-body connection. Our mind doesn't know whether we're in that moment again, or we're just remembering a past memory. So it's really important to be able to release some of that visceral energy in order to truly go deeper and heal, and then gain the wisdom, because there's always wisdom from these events as well. And once we release some of that and are more present in our body, then we can begin to use the mind as well to look for the lessons and the learnings and the growth.
Yeah, what a nice means to have a backup kind of somatic process to work with. Like you said, so she was non-verbal at that point, or barely verbal at that point. And I suspect that people who have had severe trauma like PTSD, they may be verbal, but they may not be verbal in this category. You can bracket out the event, maybe a soldier coming back from war, or somebody who was raped, or some, things like that. And so to access somatically first, and then facilitate language. Yeah, what
important.
Yeah, what a neat
important, because whenever, if we think of anything and it brings a really strong visceral reaction in our body, or a really strong tension or constriction, that means there's something there for us to work with. And again, it can be very unconscious. It can be from a childhood moment, or been last to be picked on the team all the time, and that feeling of, because before the age of 7, we don't have the critical analytical mind. They say we're just like in theta, which is just being hypnotized. So everything is going in subliminally, whether explicitly or implicitly. So that's why we all have stuff. And it's really important that, again, and that's why triggers can be such a teacher, because it has nothing to do with what the person is saying. Again, people can say horrible things, and they do. But if it brings up something within me, again, that's a teacher for me. That's a guide to be like, oh, what is this? What can I work with? What needs to be released within me? Because we all know eventually, as we grow, some things people say, it just washes over us. We're like, right, whatever, or it just washes over us. But then some things really stick, and that's because there could be a previous emotional imprint. There's an inner wound that it's touching on. And that's why having this mindset of curiosity and what could I learn here, and not in a really frantic way of, oh, I need to learn something here, and what is it in me? No, it's a very natural process of, wow, I'm really feeling this now, and what might it be? And again, always using some kind of somatic, whether it's dancing, shaking, tapping, silent counseling, anything really, just to help move that through the body.
Yeah, develop that relationship with yourself to know what your body's signaling, perhaps, and trying to say to you, because you're right. I mean,
always talking to us.
Yeah, and stuff gets it gets buried, and there's no salience there. You're not aware of it, and so that all makes perfect sense. And I had a thought about something you said, and it just ran right out of my head, but that's okay. We're gonna move.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna move
come
on.
Back.
Yeah, it might. It's okay. Yeah. So we had talked before we went live and started recording about, in a similar vein, going through a 3-step process. And is that related in a sense? And again, I'll let you fill in the details on that for the audience.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different tools and techniques, but this even 3-step process, I think it's taken from a lot of the Al-Anon or Alcohol Anonymous or the 12-step programs. And it's this idea of, first of all, awareness. Like, we have to be willing again to be aware, because if we're not aware of something, we're not aware. So we've got nothing to work with. So if we choose to stay shut down, closed off, defensive, not curious, ignorant, well, there's no space for us to even begin an awareness practice of any type. So awareness is always first, because again, if we're not aware of something, we're not aware. If we don't know, we don't know. So once awareness, that step is there, or we're willing to work with it, the next step, when we notice something, acceptance. Accept it straight away. Accept what is. There's no need to fight. There's no need to battle against it. And again, because everything is energy. Actually, until we truly accept what is, we're kind of spinning around it. Whereas when we come into acceptance, for me, because I'm very attuned to energy as well, when I accept something, I feel like, I just like drop in to the very present moment. There's no need to fight. There's no need to overanalyze. There's no need to anthem. It's just like, it's just like that ultimate awareness next step, just accepting what is, not try to rationalize it, overanalyze it, push it away, nothing, just really be. And Eckhart Tolle talks about that a lot, just the isness of what is. Because when we're not going in with our judgmental mind and criticizing and analyzing, it just is. And you see how it's our mind and the stories that we create that creates so much more of the tension and the bigger issue. So acceptance. And then the third step is action. And action is the antidote to everything and anything. As long as we're not taking action, nothing's going to happen. And an action could simply be, after you have observed something and accepted it, maybe then that's it. That in and of itself, things can dissipate. Maybe the action is like that. You need to cry. Maybe it's a journal. Maybe it's a reaching out to someone because you're like, oh, actually, there's something here that I want to work on and I feel ready to work on now. It's, creating a new visualization for yourself, when you dream. It's debunking, why am I even thinking this? Where did this come from? And what's a better story for me? Like, do I truly believe this? So when we move into action, after we've had the awareness and the acceptance, we can really pivot in so many different ways. But again, if we're not aware in the first place, we can't do that, and we're just kind of spinning.
Yeah, for sure. And I did think of the thought I had, and it's still somewhat in context with what we were saying. You mentioned like up to age 7 that we're in this kind of sponge state. And what I like to think about, maybe share this with the audience, is at that age, it's a cost benefit thing for us evolutionarily, as young people coming up, learning how to exist within our system, our ecosystem, or wherever we find ourselves. And so we take in good and bad when we're learning, because we're wide open. We're learning language, we're learning social skills, we're learning survival skills, we're learning all these things. And in the modern world, we're learning English and math and all these other things at a young age. But I always like to say that it gives you some comfort to know that when you were that young person, I think even going up into the adolescence, that you have to take so much in, and we can't referee that, and we don't have the say psycho-emotional sophistication to filter and be our own little analysts and therapists and say, okay, so this was bullshit and we don't have to, and this is good, right? So I mean, I just wanted to accentuate what you had said earlier, that we take on a lot as young people. Even if we lived a fairly Leave It to Beaver charmed life, there's still crap coming at you, and
totally. And when we think about it, and this is why anything is possible and anything can be changed. Because even if you just expand that a little bit more, and when you think about any baby that's born in any country, anywhere around the world, that baby is just pure and utter consciousness and vulnerability, and at the mercy of the people around them. And that baby is given and told everything about them. They're told their name, they're told this is the way you get love, and this is how we learn. And I'm not saying this is bad. A lot of it is really useful, but this is also why the beliefs from our family, our peers, our education system, the culture we grew up in, society, they're not really true. A lot of them can be true and they're good if they serve us. But otherwise, it's like, this is just information that's been passed down and given to me. And it's my power as a person to be able to tune in and go, actually, does this feel true for me? And discern. And if it doesn't, create a new belief for myself.
Yeah.
Create a new thought for myself. This is our power. And often it takes, it does take someone within the family line to change things. And often they're the black sheep, like I was. They're the odd one out. They feel like they don't belong. Because again, we don't question, we just kind of keep going. It's like, oh, because this is the way it was always done. This is the way they always did it. Oh, it's because my family is like this, I'm like this. No, I don't have any other choice. This is genetic. This is the way it goes on. And it's like, no, that's actually not true.
Yeah.
And it moves into the field of epigenetics and the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, who is like so incredible. I love him. And it's this idea of, it's not our genes that determine, an illness or what kind of life we live. Epigenetics is we have the power to influence and control our genes and how they will express. And it's more based off of the lifestyle and the environment and the beliefs that we've brought up with, that is actually just repeating the patterns of, if there is a family illness that is going and going, it's more because of the lifestyle and the environment the people are in, and hence the genes are in, that they are expressing in that way. But again, we have the power and choice to change that.
Yeah. And science is finally kind of tugging itself away and admitting that genes are probabilistic over deterministic. That shift is going on. And in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, it was all very deterministic. And if your maternal grandfather had cancer, you're going to die of cancer and all these things. But we've opened that up. And yeah, I agree. The epigenetic phenomena, I think for me, it's like stretched over time. So if you live a life of a particular mindset or a particular stress factor, so again, not working through unresolved trauma, that will open up novel expressions within your gene profile, and the alleles will move the way they do. And the other thing that I might bring into it, and it's obvious, and I think you even mentioned it, but the fancy word is sort of the meme sphere, or the memetics, are just as powerful as genes. And you said this in the sense that the family hands you your identity, essentially, or the community, the church, whatever, hands you that identity. And that's the meme inheritance. So so meme is just another word for gene, but it's an abstract gene. It's not a physical gene. And I like that too, that, it's again, I'm repeating what you just said, but it's more that you can bracket that as being very similar to genes, in the sense that everything that you were given is a blueprint, a social blueprint or an emotional blueprint, or however you want to look at that. So anyway, that's just one way that I keep all of this kind of stuff organized in my little head. But memes are
they are blueprints.
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly it. And this is why, like, what's a belief? If we look at what's a belief, because we're living our life off beliefs, and our beliefs are programmed into us and we live them out. But a belief is just a thought that we have thought over and over again, that we just accept as true. And now it's programmed into our subconscious mind as a truth, whatever that truth may be, whether it's, in relation to like money, and money is really hard to come by, or I have to work really hard for money, or it's all men are assholes and there's no good ones left, or whatever these things are that we hear over and over again. And we may not consciously think them now in our day-to-day living because they're programmed into us. But again, if we are seeing or experience something over and over again that is kind of proving that, again, this is the curiosity piece that's showing me that this is the belief that I am holding. So how do we change beliefs? Well, again, we have to be aware of what we're holding in the first place. And then we begin to rewire. And again, this is the idea of neuroplasticity and the power that we hold, because a belief is nothing at the end of the day. Like, it's just an energy. It's just a frequency that has been programmed into us. So in order to create something new, we have to start thinking and telling ourselves a new story. And yes, it will feel like resistance. Yes, it will feel hard straight away, because everything within us is like, our old program is like, no, this is bullshit. This is a lie. This cannot be true. This is no way this could happen. But we're never going to believe a belief straight off, but we keep doing the work anyway. And eventually it clicks in, and that's how we evolve and grow as well. Because there's actually one of my mentors that I really love as well, Amanda Francis. She always talks about, she's always like, God is not up there, whatever you want to call it, source creator is not up there with the chalkboard in the sky going, no, you, Karen Maloney, this is absolutely 1,000,000% not possible for you.
Yeah.
It may not seem possible because nobody else has done it yet, but it's absolutely 1,000,000% possible. But it takes me changing and rewiring me for what I do want and for what does make me feel good, no matter what has happened before, no matter what everyone else is doing, no matter what the whole family has done before, society or culture. It's like, it's okay. I can change it. It's not an ultimate truth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the impediments that comes up, and God knows this word's been overused, but the ego or the I-ness of the self is hard. It comes along evolutionarily to defend us and protect us and save us from doing stupid things or getting hurt. But at the same time, just like the learning curve of a child, the cost benefit of the ego is that it is very rigid and it doesn't like to change. And I think that accentuates what you just said, is that, you've got this, the ego is absolutely essential. So sometimes I get cringy when people say, oh, you need to, and ego death is fine when you're doing ayahuasca or something like that. Do that for a very narrow window of time, get out of yourself for a little, but to manage yourself in that sense is to, recognize the ego and recognize what you were just saying, the belief system, the talk that comes out of you. That may not be cognitively or it may be dissonant in a sense that it's not really aligned with what your best intentions might be. So anyway, I decided to throw the ego in there.
Yeah, but it's funny because again, as I have progressed in my journey as well and connected more to me, the human, and me, the consciousness of the universe and the oneness that exists within us all, when we begin to get a bit of space between, me and my ego and my problems and habits and behaviors and situations that all feel really personal, it's like, oh my God, I am broken. There's something fundamentally wrong with me. Once we begin to get some space, we're like, no, that's never the truth. We are not broken. Nobody ever needs fixing at our core, at our soul. Yes, we may have picked up some habits and behaviors, but again, I just look at it now. I'm like, oh, it's just a pattern. It's just a pattern. Like, take out all the personal attack. I'm like, it's just a pattern. This is just a pattern in my brain. This is a wiring in my brain that I've picked up somewhere because, again, I am so intelligent. Our brain is so intelligent. It's always trying to protect us, keep us safe, keep us in what's familiar. Even if that familiar is, drinking 10 bottles of wine every single day, it's familiar. It's something that I look at everything as a medicine. I'm like, that is the exact thing someone turned to at a time that was really, really difficult for them. That sometimes was the difference between life and death. But our medicine becomes a poison when we lean on it and we're afraid to let go of it and begin the inner work. So, for me, it's helped loads as well. Be like, okay, this is just a pattern. This is just a pattern. This is just a pattern. And any pattern can be changed. But that's our piece. That's our accountability to ourselves. That's our work with ourselves. That's our honesty with ourselves. That's our feeling all the emotion that we've hidden. That's for us. But it's possible because it's just a pattern.
Yeah. And I think that's where folks like yourself are doing essential work, because if I'm stuck in a pattern and I don't necessarily have the tools in my tool chest to do it, I come to you and I talk to you, and you help me to stop the cognitive dissonance, to stop the bypassing, like, oh, I did it, I'm fine, I'm awakened now, or whatever, and whatever it is, again, BS that we concoct for ourselves. That's what I like about the work that folks like yourself do, and the work that you do, is you are there as sort of a gatekeeper of what's really transpiring objectively in a person's work that a person's sharing with you. So we have to account for their being honest with you as the coach or the mentor. So that's what I love about the work. You're on the ground doing the work with them, and that makes all the difference in the world. Because if you do it on your own, it's possible, I think, but you really got to check in with other people, right? And bounce things back and forth. And feel it.
And this is the this is kind of the crux as well, because the reality is we have to do it on our own. I cannot jump inside of anyone and feel their experience for them or process what they need to process for them. healing is a very, very, very individual journey. And believe me, I've experienced it time and time again. I'm like, oh my God, I'm here with a group of people, but I'm all alone because I'm experiencing my own traumas, my own issues. They're going through their own process.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like you say, it's not that we need to do it alone. And especially, you know, the way I work as well, I'm like the lighthouse. I'm like, here, there is another way. There's another way to live. There's another way to think. There's another way to feel. There is another way. I continue my work daily, but I've come out of a lot of messy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that honesty of it is messy and it is uncomfortable. And it does feel like you're 2 steps forward and 10 steps back at times. But it's all okay as well, because that's normal. We're just coming up to our own resistances and we can do it. You know, I'm not special. I'm not particularly gifted. I'm not different to anyone else or like blessed with the inner work capability. No, I have done it. I continue to do it, and I just sit my ass down. So, but also I share with people tools and skills and invite them to explore for themselves, because ultimately, again, we're with ourselves 24/7. We need to have the tools and skills to be able to emotionally regulate ourselves within a moment and not think, oh, I need to hold on to this and remember this until I connect with Karen again next week or whoever it is.
Right,
you know,
right.
That's not sustainable living. My idea is like, I share everything. I'm like, you be your own coach, because
Mm-hmm.
you're with you 24/7.
Yeah.
And once we know these tools and skills, it becomes easier.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't need a codependent relationship with anyone or anything, because again, that's not sustainable. Yes, it's perfectly fine to check in. Yes, it's totally okay to ask for help. I still do at times, but it's that ultimate thing of I can be my own coach and I can process things myself. I don't always have to reach out, and it's getting to that level as well. And you know, that's where support is really helpful as well, to get to a base of, okay, I'm feeling okay at the moment. I've got these skills and tools and I'm managing. I can move through triggers and emotional, you know, traumas and pains, and okay, I'm doing okay. But again, there's always layers and levels. So yeah, that's always my goal as well, to help people be their own coach, because it's totally possible.
Yeah. No, and I think that's such a huge thing that we could open up, because I think a democratized self-improvement ecosystem is much healthier, because when we go for help, you know, when we go to therapists, there's transference where you start to really unhealthily attach to the therapist, and sometimes there's counter transference where the therapist then starts doing stuff. And so and then there's the guru attachment. And I've been hovering around all that self-improvement work for over 30 years, and it's like I see that where we project onto somebody the archetype of a father or a savior or a mother type or whatever it is that's bringing us comfort and that sense of temporary well-being, and not necessarily cutting down. Again, that's maybe the bypassing or whatever. So to, as you just said, to do the dance of I'm helping you, but you're helping yourself, and I'm here for you, but you're here for yourself. So that's very eloquent, I guess, what you said. About there are boundaries, right? And we have to understand that, because if people project onto you that you're the mother type that's going to always be there for them, to take care of them, and they're, you know, they can depend. So like you said, it's a dependency thing, and that has to be kept in mind, I believe, when we do this kind of work, for sure.
Because again, healing is personal. Like, because nobody can, you know, I've had this idea as well before of, you know, I'm in my whole own individual universe. Nobody is here with me. No matter how close someone is with me, they're not inside of me. And it's only me in here. And even when I'm communicating with other people, again, this is why I call myself an inside out coach as well, because everything comes from within. It has nothing to do with anyone outside. Because even no matter what somebody says to me, I'm still interpreting it through my own ears and my own internal language. So people can say something, but I totally might interpret it a different way, because everything's going through my internal system. And that's why we have to work from the inside out. We have to change those programs we have if they're not serving us. We have to clear those inner funkiness and lower vibrational energies, and change our thoughts and create new stories and visions for ourselves in order to experience the world differently as well. I don't know if you hear the rain now as well. It started.
Oh, no, it's not coming in on the mic. Oh, but I'm glad
Okay,
you're getting rain. Oh, that's good. That's
yes,
good.
we're in rainy season, so it's good.
Oh, we got gypped on our rainy season. I live in Florida,
Ooh.
and it did not rain this year. And I'm like, oh, so
Yeah,
anyway,
tough.
yeah. Anyway, so let me pull back from my ADD moments.
Inside out.
Yeah, and you would also, in one of your podcasts, had mentioned well, there's two things that I want to touch on. That the comparing ourselves, I think, ties into this too, and you had done a really nice podcast about that. And that, so in doing the work, we must also attach a caveat that we can't compare ourselves to somebody else's success story for alcoholism or sexual abuse or any of these things, these categories that we find ourselves in. It's good to be inspired by another person's story, but so I'll let you finish. I'm not going to. But that podcast you did was nice about comparing ourselves. It was a different context, like comparing ourselves to Jennifer Lopez or whoever the hot guy is right now. I'm old, so I don't know who the hot guys are anymore. But anyway, comparing ourselves to gorgeous, fabulous people who do wonderful things and all that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, it relates to healing as well, I believe, right?
Yeah, but this is the thing, like maybe we all do, or maybe it's more so women, but we definitely do compare. And there's a saying, we compare somebody's outside to our inside. And we're just judging on appearances. And again, nobody knows what's going on behind closed doors inside of any single person, no matter what a good front they have on, or no matter how together they seem to have it, or how well their life is, or how they've everything figured out. I don't believe that's ever the truth. Everyone's always figuring it out as they go. But I know I used to like that compare and feel like I was being left behind, or, I was somehow not doing things right, because it's like, oh my God, they have all these things and they're at this level, and oh, what's wrong with me? And I think it's very, very common for a lot of people. But ultimately, again, when it comes back to connecting to my heart, my soul, who I came here to be, like this, flesh and blood body that I chose to inhabit for this life experience, when I really honor that and see this as my home, like this is the gift I have been given, and every single person has been given in their body in order to experience this experience. And when I truly honor that and see that, it's like, oh my God, comparison is so futile. I'm like, why? Because it's this bigger picture again of, we're all one. We are all made by creation, whatever you believe creation to be. And creation has made us all perfectly. And creation has made us as we are, with whatever color skin and whatever color eyes. And it's for us to truly inhabit and honor that and respect it. And again, feel fully at home in this flesh and blood in order to live our truest expression, and in order to be our truest expression as well. And that's why, so many things as I look back, I'm like, it's just insane to even compare. I'm like, why? Everyone's on their journey. Even if everyone is all life coaches, even, they're like, oh, the market's full or whatever it is. And I'm like, that might be true on one level, but it's also not true, because everyone brings their own energy, their own vibe, their own conversations, their own experiences. They connect with people in different ways. So there's actually no point in comparison and competition. It's like, just do you, be the greatest expression of you, and just live your life. And even there's a line in the Course in Miracles as well that says, the only thing that we need to be saved from is our own insane thinking. And that's absolutely true as I go on my journey. Because it's me with me all the time. Doesn't fucking matter what's going on outside there. It's me with me. Right.
I mean, as far as you can ever know, you are all that you will ever know, and you have to know you. And that sounds stupid, but I mean, it's like, if you as you mentioned a moment ago, I don't know, there are boundaries in the I-ness, there are boundaries in the selfness, and I think the first inquiry in the exploration that we do is to discover the I-ness and the selfness, recognize the I-ness and the selfness in the other, and then if we are relatively whole and in touch with our humanity, then that's when the empathy can open up. That's when the connection can be made. That's when the communication can be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And we can sort of form a web of connection that, to me, the intimacy in that, if you can be honest and loving and empathetic to somebody, far greater than what we were just talking about, the coveting, the wanting,
Mm-hmm.
to have that body, to have that mind, to have the wealth, whatever whatever it is, the nonsense that we think we want. I think that's such a much greater treasure and richness, is that if we can clear ourselves out, be in that sort of openness, and then make these connections with other people, that to me is rich. So, and you know it, you get in that flow state with somebody, right? You're just switched on, and you're like, and then later on, you're like, you'll think back on it, you'll be like, oh, great, we had that time, and we were at the cafe, and we were talking, or you're a random stranger. I've met random people before, and I'm just like, wow, dude, that was so cool. But anyway,
absolutely.
Yeah. And that goes to something you mentioned, the Course in Miracles, in one of your other blogs, or sorry, your podcast. You talked about something Marianne Williamson had said about a particular aspect of persona. And so the persona, as it dances about the stage and flits about, that kind of ties into being the authentic self, being, as you said, the greatest expression of yourself, but also an authentic expression of yourself, and knowing what is that. I mean, we get so lost in our actor roles that we play. Sometimes it's hard to touch base back, like, who the hell am I, right?
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother cat. We could have a whole interview about that. But yeah, just to tie in something that I thought was another great podcast that you did was that persona that we project. And I'll let you pick that up and carry that a little bit if you want.
Yeah, and it comes to, again, awakening and opening up and being curious to something so much bigger than just and of course in Miracles uses the I with the capital I and the I with the small I. And the small I is me, Karen, and the roles I play and the job I do and the titles and, friend and mother and whatever roles we play and achievements and this very human 3D aspect of us. And I mean, that's important because we're here and we're living it. But if that's our sum total and we're just totally living from the physical 3D world and what we can touch, taste, and see, we are missing the magic. We are missing our true power and connection. And that is the I with the capital I, which is that essence, that oneness, that consciousness, that energy that exists within all of us, that pure consciousness that cannot be touched, no matter what you have experienced, that still exists even beyond all this human form and this humanness. There's that essence, and the more that we harness and cultivate a relationship with that, which is the intangible, which is those intuitive guides and those nudges that we hear and we all have, but we often don't listen to it because we go into the human logical rationalizing mind and thinking, well, that's absolutely insane, that's crazy, that could never be. But you build into this bigger picture of faith in the unseen and trusting that inner internal knowing and GPS system to navigate this human experience even more so, because it's not so dense. We're not so stuck in the 3D harshness of it all. We're like, yes, I see it, I feel it, but I'm elevating, I'm bringing something higher within me. I'm allowing it to express through me, to move through this human experience as well, because it's a gift. And the magic and the awe and the wonder that exists, but we don't see it because we're so stuck into the physicality of it all that we miss the magic and we miss the wonder. And that's why children are so incredible as well, with that magic and wonder and essence, and like, oh my God, everything's such a bright, shiny object. And, it's not about living in the bright, shiny object, getting distracted, but it's seeing the awe that exists and the magic. And like, everything is incredible when you really become so present and connected. Like anything, from even a pen, a biro, it's like, who even had the imagination to create this? And how do they even start putting it together? And everything just becomes like this mind-blowing, oh my God, look at everything that we have and that's around us, and this imagination and the power we have through our imagination to create. Wow, imagine if I was really connected with that and using that energy and creating it for good as opposed to bad, quote unquote. And that's why I believe everything exists, because that is the power we do hold. We are creators. We can create literally anything. That's why anything is possible. but we're the ultimate drivers. And if we are not conscious and harnessing and using our focus and energy and consciousness and attention for good, well, we can be very creatively destructive. And we see that.
Yeah, absolutely. Creation is shadow and light. It has two aspects to it. And you mentioned earlier about how our beliefs and identities are sort of handed to us at an early age. And so it prompts us to wonder, using our imagination, what a culture might look like. And by culture, I pretty much mean the species. If we approached our rearing of children in the social sphere, not personal mom and dad taking the steps they think are best for their child, but more in the schooling of children, to incorporate some of this kind of thinking and get away from sort of the very rigid analytical logic, propositional kind of thinking, to more, like you were saying, the wonder and the imagination. And like Rudolf Steiner did that to some degree, I believe, with the Waldorf school system, and Montessori, I think maybe to a degree, these starting systems of kindergarten, first, second grade or whatever, excuse me, where they encourage play and they encourage this expression of ourselves. And wouldn't it be nice, again, imagining to see children coming up in that regard, and having that broader scope of perception and seeing the world and interpreting the relationship that they have with the physical world. So I throw that out there as a what if kind of thing, but it speaks to what you just said.
Yeah, it's nice to dream. And again, I think us all wakening up and beginning to have these wonders and curiosities is what creates change, beginning to question. And I don't think it's off the table, but it's not going to come from a top down. The school system is not going to start implementing it. So say it comes from an individual. And that's why it's so important that we all do connect to our truth and our imagination and that wonder and awe and our ability to create and play, no matter what anyone else is doing, no matter all the fear and the hatred. It's like, well, I'm choosing something different. And I think there's lots more people choosing something different now. That's how we evolve as well. It's like, you don't fight what is. That's like such a waste of energy. You create something new and then people will follow. And it's like, individually, just keep doing your thing. Just keep going. Just keep doing the inner work, being that expression of love, of light. And that doesn't mean, you're all airy fairy in rose tinted glasses. No, that actually means you're really awake and you're responsible and you're willing to do the work. You're willing to feel the uncomfortableness and the pain. And you're still willing to choose something different, and you're still willing to smile at the stranger and be kind no matter what. And that's, I think, what we're all being asked to do. And that's, I believe, what we need to do in order to save the species, because we will wipe ourselves out if we don't, quote unquote, cop on.
Yeah.
Soon enough,
No, I completely agree. And I think that is the way out is, and this is where I put stock in your generation and the next generation coming on board who are in their early 20s now, is that I at least hope, and I've seen evidence and palpable signs of this happening more so than my generation and my parents' generation, in that there is novel thinking. There are new ways of approaching things. So whether it's, making a lawn into a edible landscape, or working for a corporation that gives a shit, and doesn't treat people like commodities. I see young companies doing that, and it looks silly from the outside. There's game rooms and there's hammocks and there's smoothie bars and crap like that, and you never saw that in the old system. But you were a commodity in the old system. You rented yourself out to people, and now it's more of this give and take kind of system, where I think ultimately, we have to value. This gets super complex because obviously the economy and market and enterprise systems have to exist. But I think if people who are trying novel ways of doing the same thing will be the leaders of the future, and they'll be the ones. And it's not even that they're leading, it's just they're demonstrating a way, like you said, using the imagination and not fighting with riots and protests and things like that. That's only for very extreme situations, I think, is that necessary. But otherwise, it's more of, So yin and yang, it's more of a feminine expression. It's
Yeah.
more of the creative expression. It's more of the, it's not passivity in the weak sense. It's passivity in the sense that I'm trusting this process to work. So, you know,
And
and
again, you know, it's always existed. There's always been rebels and, you know, the people who are, you know, called crazy and absolutely, you know, off their head, that this was insane. You know, even the likes of Henry Ford, he was called insane. He totally changed the automobile industry. The Wright brothers in airplanes, like they were all laughed at, thought they were insane. And that's why it's like, you know, you do you. And when we move through our own limitations and our stories of, oh, why do I feel this is crazy? Why do I care what so many people think? When we move through those, we just do us. And we just do what we came here to do. And that's the beauty, because it doesn't matter anyone else's opinion. Our opinion of ourselves is the most important. So it doesn't matter, because there'll always be haters. There'll always be people cheering you on. It doesn't matter. You still do you. You still follow your truth. You still put your creation, your love, your energy out there, because that's what you came here to do.
Yeah. And I would suggest that the artists and the musicians of our societies are those people who are the exemplar, or maybe the archetypal character that demonstrates that for us. And they give us that permission to be our own little artists, or even if it's rubbish, you know, we're our own little artist, our own little musician, whatever it is, and have the courage to do that. Because you got people, like you said, Henry Ford or some of these other mavericks, you had people like Warhol who put a picture of a soup can up on a wall, and everybody loved him, right? You know, and it's like, and other, you know, abstract artists, and some people are like, what the hell is that? And other people are like, oh my God, it's so gorgeous. So, you know, there's pure subjectivity.
And as they say as well, you know, not everyone was cheered on from the beginning, and that's always the way. People are like, oh God, off she goes, God's a bit insane. But then they say eventually everyone will start asking and be like, oh my God, that's incredible, you know. So you just keep going anyway, you just keep following your truth, because if people turn around, they turn around. But if they don't, you're still doing what makes you happy, and you're still expressing and honoring yourself and being your authentic self. And I think that's the best gift any of us can do for ourselves and for anyone else around us, because this underlying manipulative and people pleasing, like, it doesn't serve, it doesn't help us, and it doesn't help others, no matter what crazy stories we're telling ourselves. The only way is authentic truth and expression. And, you know, it also comes with that comes with the confidence and a sense of empowerment, because even now, even if I go into a room with, I don't know, a bunch of CEOs or whatever, the old me would have been very intimidated and feel like, oh, I have to prove myself and perform and make sure they like me. Whereas now I just go in and be me, and I don't care. I'm like, if they don't like me, that's okay. But most of the time it doesn't go like that, because actually when we are being really authentic, it's actually really likable. Surprise, surprise.
Right, absolutely. But we always have that inner critic, that person of our committee of ourselves that says, oh, come on, who the hell are you, right, to go in there and tell them something.
And that's okay, but that's for us to work with.
And you invert the perspective. All those powerful people are thinking, well, you know, we've been butting heads for 3 weeks on something, and maybe this person will throw something into the mix that shifts our trajectory around. And so they know what they're doing, you know, and they bring somebody with novel experience in there. So but it's
also remembering the humanity. You know, at the end of the day, I'm like, they're just another human like me. I don't care what kind of a pedestal I put them on. I actually bring them, we're all on the same level. Nobody is superior or inferior. That's the truth of, we are all one. And again, when I remember that, and I'm like, they're just a human. They're just a human trying to navigate this life as well. Well, it really takes the pressure off.
Oh, absolutely. One thing I tell myself is that nobody's important. You can do important things. Nobody's special. You can do special things. But look how we project onto certain people importance and specialness. And that's caustic. It's terrible. And it destroys them. You see people who are, you know, again, sensitive geniuses who create things, and they project, you know, the masses project all this accolades and adulation onto people and build them up, and it destroys them. And so that's one thing I like to use as a governing mechanism for myself, is like, we all have the potential to do important things and special things. And some people do it more often. Some people are really gifted, but they're never important. It's like what they say to actors in Hollywood. It's like, you're only as good as your last film. or your last book that you wrote. Otherwise, you're just another schmuck on the streets. And so I like that because it keeps us, humble. And so anyone can rise up if they, as you've said throughout the interview, if they sort of believe in themselves, invest in an idea, invest in the imagination, and then actualize that dream, that image, that fancy that they have in their minds to do something. That's when the specialness arises and the importance arises. So, like you said, it's you do you, and when you do important, watch out. It's gonna be spectacular. So
yeah.
We've reached about an hour or just over an hour. So I think I might throw one more. Yeah, it does. That's the beautiful thing about these interviews. We get into this beautiful flowing conversation, and it happens with everybody I've ever talked to. So it's nice. Yeah. It's nice because it's safe, right? It's a nice environment, and we're focused on each other. We're focused on a subject, and we can just go. And so I will ask you like one more thing, I think, and then I know you have things to do today. So in your client history, in the experiences that you've had working with people, what would you say is the repeating theme that seems to come up with folks? Like, and this is me sort of curious about your work and just wanting to know like your relationship. So is there a particular type of issue or set of issues that people come to you with, or is there repeatability in what you confront or work with?
Yeah. And again, the presenting problem is never the problem. So people could come for a multitude of issues, whether career, relationship, time management, productivity, whatever, like a multitude of issues. But the problem is never really the problem. And the deeper root of so much is coming down to that sense of worthiness.
Okay.
And feeling good enough. And believe me, it is not conscious. Because I was that person years ago when someone had even brought that up to me. I was like, no, because consciously I thought, no, I am good enough. I do deserve this. And like convincing myself and telling myself, but my body, my life was telling a very different story. And actually, when I went in and discovered that, oh my God, at the root of all of this was a feeling of not feeling good enough. And that was the reason for everything. It was like, it was mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
And that's why it's subconscious. We're not aware that the clue is in the name, sub, below. So it's always in one way or another some lead of not feeling good enough, deeply insecure route that it comes back to.
Yeah. Amen. So for the YouTube audience, I will have a link to Kate's website down below in the description field. And yes. What did I say? Kate? I'm sorry. I'm in the
That's
flow.
All right. Easy.
KarenMaloney.com.
I don't take offense.
Yeah. I got called Joshua and Julian and Jason a lot. So we're in this. I'm so sorry I called you Kate. Anyway, KarenMaloney.com. The link will be down in the description field, and you will have access to her podcasts, her blogs there. I will put her Twitter feed in there as well, because when she does release a new episode of a podcast, it goes to the Twitter feed, so you'll be able to access Karen's work there. And I highly encourage you to be curious and go into the blogs and do some reading. It's Divided Mind, Body, and Soul, which I think is a very clever division there to address certain things that you want to talk about and address and help people with. And it has been a tremendous pleasure speaking with you today. I very much appreciate your time and sharing some thoughts and ideas, and being able to just unpack some ideas about what it is you do and the work you do.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Justin. It's been a pleasure, and it's always really nice to connect and, to speak with new people about, again, this human life that we're all just navigating. And again, I don't believe in putting anyone on a pedestal, no matter how successful they are. We all still have our inner critics and inner securities that we I say must work through, but also it's our individual choice. But I definitely encourage people to be more curious about themselves, because their magic, their potential is incredible.
Amen. That's a beautiful place to just hit pause on the conversation. So I will say to the YouTube audience, don't just go to KarenMaloney.com to read the blogs and listen to the podcasts. And there's a few other things in there. There's also a means to access connection with Karen to do the work. And so if you've been looking for someone to help you with a transformative process, to help work through some things like we had discussed in this interview, so please consider that available to you, and she'll take good care of you. You'll be in good hands.
Mhm.
So I thank you, YouTube audience, very
We'll
much
have
for your
fun.
time.
It's not all so serious, you
There
know.
you go. And you do little group things too, don't you? You have like occasionally, I think in some of your
Every now and again,
yeah, you have occasional
So
group things. So yeah, there's opportunities there. So anyway, yes, to the YouTube audience, thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to both of us, and for meeting Karen. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And Karen, I'll say goodbye to you after we hit record, but to the YouTube folks, especially that 10% of you that typically hang on in my analytics to the very end. Bless you guys. Much
well
love
done.
to you. Yeah, thank you for
Lots of
being
love.
with us. All right, take care. And Karen, thank you again. It's been a wonderful conversation. All right, here we go. And also, oh wait, I'm not doing that. I got to find the stop. Bye-bye, everyone.